Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel. This week I want to talk about periods. That's right, we're talking about menstrual cycles. So if you don't want to hear about menstrual cycles, just stop watching this, go watch one of my other videos, and I will see you next week. Okay, I feel like this is really important to talk about because 50% of the population is female and we have menstrual cycles. And so while it's probably going to be disgusting to some of you and most of us don't like talking about our periods, I think it's really important to talk about because everybody has one. It's a part of life, it's a healthy part of life. It means that our bodies are healthy and they're going through that natural cycle that they need to go through. However, I will say that because periods are not talked about enough, some of the products that we use, we just assume we have to use them, and those products are really making our periods harder than they need to be. And so I think it's really important that I talk about this today, even though I'm kind of like exposing, some not so comfortable things to talk about myself, because I hope that by doing so, I can help you have a better period. So ever since I can remember, my periods have been absolutely terrible. I had cramps that would make me vomit. I would just be like lying on the floor, curled up in a ball, just like wanting to die. My periods always lasted 7 days or more sometimes. They were so heavy that I'd have to double up on a pad and tampon all the time. I went through an entire bag of pads every single time I had my period, and usually about a half a box of tampons because I don't really enjoy using tampons, or I never really enjoyed using them. All that to say, I really thought that was just gonna be it for me. I was like, well, it's genetics and this is just the way it's gonna be. My periods are always gonna be bad and there's nothing I can do about that. So then I moved up to San Francisco, I went to school, and I met a friend at school who is a vegan and who's zero waste. Zero waste living is this mentality of trying to reduce the amount of waste that you produce, hence the name zero waste. So basically you try to not use plastic or disposable items. You typically try not to eat out where there's styrofoam containers, or try to recycle whenever you can. But for the most part, you try to reduce the amount of trash that you're producing on a daily basis. This was my friend. She was awesome. She would bring her own coffee mugs when we would go to coffee shops. She had her own fork and knife and chopsticks that she would use when we would eat food together. And she really inspired me to try to ascribe to this lifestyle of zero waste living. One of the first things I thought about, I just held up 2. I meant 1. So when I thought to myself, oh, I'm gonna be zero waste, one of the first things I thought about actually was my period. And that's because I can remember it clear as day. I was, talking to my friend. I'd been talking to her for weeks about zero waste living and about how she's a vegan. And while I'm not a vegan and I don't know that I ever will be, she really started to just get me thinking about zero waste living. And I remember I started my period and it was like any other period. I was, in pain and I was just not having a good time at all. And I remember being in my bathroom taking a shower and I looked over at my trash can and it was full to the top of just period products. And I was like, okay, how am I ever gonna be zero waste if I produce basically a bathroom sized trash can every single month of just my period products? So I remember kind of being a little awkward about this, but going up to her anyways and asking her, hey, how do you handle your period if you're zero waste? Because as far as I can tell, all the products that we have out there for girls on their period are disposable. And she showed me what she uses, which is what I now use, spoiler alert, a menstrual cup. So I remember listening to that and being like, that's kind of weird. I don't want to put a cup up into my hoo-ha. So I'm just gonna be zero waste, but I'm not gonna be zero waste during my period. And I went on like that for probably 6 more months. And then there was one period, I can remember it vividly, when I was still doing the same thing I was doing. I was still having the same issues I was having, and I was trying to pretend like it didn't really affect me, but it really did. And it came, to a crashing halt. This whole facade that I was putting up came to a crashing halt one time when I was in school, and I can remember it. I got my period. I was collecting data for my thesis, And for those of you who don't know, my thesis has to do with microscopy. So I basically imaged a bunch of muscle fibers using this like really fancy like $1 million 3D microscope. And the room that the 3D microscope was in was underground, and it was in like this dark room because you can't like, it's kind of like when you're, what do you do with photography? When you're in a red room or like a dark room or whatever. It's kind of like that, where you don't want to like damage the fiber with light. So I had the lights off, and I would sit in there and just image my fibers, and you know, it was a great nerdy time. That's what research is like, you guys, sitting in a dark room by yourself while you're reading and writing and doing all that stuff. It's really great. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so I was on my period. I remember I started at school and I was by myself in the microscope lab, and I had shut the door and I turned off the light, and I realized that I didn't have any Advil. And Advil was something that I needed every single month. I would take like 12 Advil a day because my cramps were just so bad and excruciating that I could not get through the day without having to take 4 Advil every 6 hours, like on the dot. But I didn't have any, and I was like, oh my gosh, okay, whatever, like I'll just deal with the cramps. I'm by myself, I'm in a dark room, it's fine. My period cramps were so bad that I literally laid on the floor of that microscope room in the dark, curled up like a ball. No one knew I was in there, and I just started crying. And I could not stop. Like I was nauseous, I was dizzy, I couldn't see straight. I was just like I was in so much pain. I remember I went to the restroom and I kept going back and forth because I was like, oh my God, am I gonna barf? Like this is so bad. I went to the restroom and I was in like the bigger handicap stall, and I just like laid on the ground in this disgusting restroom because I could not stand up. That was my breaking point. That was when I was like, okay, this is not okay. My period is not healthy, and like something is wrong. I started doing research, not so much on the side of zero waste, but more so on the side of like women's health and like health as it pertains to your reproductive system. And what I found was very alarming. So essentially what happens when we put synthetic things up our hoo-ha's. And so essentially what happens is we use tampons, we use pads, those foreign objects kind of get stuck up in there. And then the next month when we are, you know, going through our period, our body's like, ugh, not only do we have like the normal stuff that we need to get rid of, like the blood and all the other stuff, but we have these like pieces that are foreign objects and we don't know what to do with them, and we need to cleanse our body. So what happens when our bodies are being cleansed? Well, essentially, we get worse and worse cramps, right? Because cramps are our body's way of like dilating our hoo-ha's and like helping us kind of like get rid of all the gunk that happens when we have periods. But when there's foreign objects in there, the bodies are like, or the bodies, you only have one body, but our bodies are like, ugh, this is not normal. So the cramps are worse, and stuff lasts longer, and it's harder to kind of like flush all of that stuff out. So I thought to myself, well, I wonder like if I detoxed that part of my body by changing the way that I approach my menstrual cycle, maybe that could actually help my health and make it so that my periods are less excruciating. The first thing I'm going to actually talk to you about is the pad alternative to my new menstrual cycle routine, and that is period panties. So this company is called Thinx. None of these products are sponsored. I've been using Thinx for 2 years, and I just bought them because I like them. But essentially what it is it's a pad, or it's underwear that has like this lining, and you can't even see it because it just looks like, I mean, that's how thin it is. But it has this lining in there that will hold up to 2 tampons worth of blood, which is quite a bit if you ask me. But yeah, so the lining goes like all the way up here, and then obviously like most of the way up in the front. The nice thing is that all of the material in here is non-toxic. It doesn't really mess up anything in your menstrual health area, in your hoo-ha, and they're really comfortable. I will typically wear these not on my first day of my period, because my first day of my period is still pretty heavy. It's not as heavy, but I'll definitely wear these like on day 3 and 4 exclusively, just because I don't want to wear a cup anymore. Or if I'm like working out or something, like I said, I prefer to not have stuff inside me, but these work great. They don't smell. I haven't had a leak unless I did buy a style of these, because you can buy different styles online. I bought a style that just didn't really work for me because I got a little bit of junk in the trunk, and then I did leak, but it wasn't a big deal. I was just wearing like workout pants and I just went home and washed them. So I would say that this is such an awesome option for those people who don't want to use cups or who are scared to use cups. It's also, it's a really nice option for when you're spotting. So like the couple days before your period and like the couple days after your period, because they feel like regular underwear. But if you don't want to like get your regular underwear all disgusting and gross, you can just use these and it's great. The other thing that I use is a cup. This looks so scary, and that's why I'm being so dramatic about this, but it's really not that scary. This is a cup. It is clean, so don't worry. But essentially what it is it's just a way for you to, oh, there's a little fuzz on it. I have to disinfect it before I use it again. But essentially it is a tampon that's zero waste, and it's a million bajillion times better than a tampon. So I'm gonna explain how I use it, and then I'm gonna talk about the benefits, because I know a lot of people are probably like, how in the world do you fit this into your hoo-ha? It doesn't make any sense. So there's two ways that you can do this. It's silicone, so it's very squishy, it's very malleable, but this rim at the top is a little bit thicker, if you can see it. And so essentially what happens is you fold this, you stick it up your hoo-ha, and then it opens up, and this like rim part kind of like suction cups to your uterine wall, and so it keeps it in place. You can move around, it'll like bend and, you know, and move with you. So essentially what you do is you fold it like this, and then you can just stick it up there, and then it'll pop open, and then it'll just kind of stay in place until it gets full. The way that I like to fold it is actually kind of pushing down, like I push down like that, push like that. This is called, I think it's called the taco or something, or maybe the burrito. But I fold it like this because it's a little easier to get in this way. And then again, it just pops open, and it's got this little stem here. So when you're ready to take it out, all you have to do is just like, I'm gonna get a little graphic right now. So when you pee, like you have to pee, you know, wipe yourself, do all of that. But then essentially what you do is you kind of like push it out using like your Kegel muscles until you can feel this little stem. And then all I do is just like grab it like this. I pull it a little bit, and then it'll just pop out. All you do is just dump the blood in the, whatever it's called, the toilet. And then you rinse it out with super hot water to sanitize it, plop it back in there, and you're good to go. Now, there are other videos that I'll actually link down below that will explain this in much better detail than I just did, but that's essentially how it works and what it does. This is a regular size, but they also have bigger sizes for if you've had a vaginal birth, or if you just have a larger uterus, whatever, which some of us do. It's just the way God made us. So the great thing about this is that not only does it not get all the gunky residue and disgusting chemicals up, you know, stuck up in your hoo-ha, but it actually lasts longer and better than a tampon. So I find that it's more comfortable. I don't leak as much, and I can leave this in for, let's see, on the first day of my period, or if I'm having a heavy day, I definitely need to change this out probably 2 to 3 times. So if I put it in at 5 in the morning when I wake up, typically around lunchtime I'll have to change it, and then maybe in the afternoon, and then before I go to bed. If I'm having a not so heavy day, like a more moderate day, I can keep this puppy in for like 8 to 12 hours sometimes. I honestly just like, you can kind of like feel when it's getting full, and that's probably the hardest part with this, is like knowing when to change it, because like a lot of times you'd be like, oh my gosh, I need to change it, and then like the blood is like only like to here, and you're like, oh, I didn't need to change it. But as you use it more and more, you kind of start to feel like, oh, okay, I can kind of feel it squishing around in there, so I need to empty it out. Again, graphic, I know, but whatever. I'm gonna tell you how it is. I'm gonna be real with you. It took me 5 months to get used to using a cup because it's just so different. So what I will say is that you don't want to just say like, I'm gonna go buy one and throw out all your other products and just start using it right away. I would say transition. Where I've seen benefit is number one, and this is probably the biggest thing ever, and I don't really understand how, but I'm not gonna ask questions because it's amazing. I told you guys before, my periods used to last 7 days of heavy disgustingness. It was not fun. Now my periods last like 3.5, like 3 to 4. I mean, like my periods were cut in half by using this Diva Cup. And I have to be honest with you, I'm pretty sure that it's just because this way of accumulating blood is a lot more efficient, for lack of a better term. Like, it's just more natural for your body. Your body doesn't have to like resist with this like, you know, weird chemical-y thing, but it just works so much better that my periods don't last as long. Other thing that I noticed is I don't have as many cramps. I'll have cramps the very first day of my period now. They'll last for maybe a few hours, and some of them are still really bad, like to the point where you're like, but what I will say is I will definitely take a couple of those cramps versus what I had happen to me when I was up in San Francisco, where I was like vomiting and lying on the floor crying and like wondering what I was doing with my life. It is so much better. I'm telling you, it is amazingly better. So instead of using medication to help with cramps and moodiness and PMS, I don't use Midol anymore. I never use Midol, but I don't use Advil anymore. I don't use any medication other than when I have really, really, really bad cramps, and that might be, like I said, just on the first day. Instead, what I use are essential oils. There are a ton of essential oils that you can use for your period to help with PMS, with cramping, with moodiness, with all of that. But I really have been enjoying these 2 essential oils specifically. This one is Sclerescence, and then this one is Raven. And both of these are blends, and I'll show you some stuff so this one, like basically what's in here. So this has peppermint, sage, Spanish sage, and fennel. And then the Raven has, where is it? Camphor, lemon, wintergreen, peppermint, and eucalyptus. So both of these blends I diffuse basically every day that I'm on my period. I'm diffusing them right now, and I'm just like, get in my nose, because they just help. It just looked like I was smacking myself in the face, but I wasn't. But yeah, anyways, they really help when I'm diffusing them to just kind of help me feel a little bit less like, you know, when you're on your period and you're like, I just like, you know, I'm like, it makes you feel less of that and more of like, and that's honestly the best way I can describe it. The other way I use these, I'm usually a big proponent of drinking essential oils, but these 2 I don't drink just because I think that they're a little too strong to drink, and there's some stuff in there, like eucalyptus is one that you probably shouldn't ingest. So there's some stuff in here that I wouldn't want to ingest. However, you are going to think I'm crazy, but this works every single time. I put probably 3 drops of each of these on my stomach. I rub it on my stomach, like right where, like I don't know, like where my pelvis is a little bit, all the way up to my abdomen, and that helps reduce my cramps a lot. You're probably thinking, what are you talking about? You can't just put oils on your stomach and have it help. You need something to like go inside and be disinflammatory. I don't know what it is, but it works. I'm telling you, it works. So if you have these blends, oh, I'm like showing you the back, I'm not showing you the front. If you have these blends, or if you have like, you know, sage or eucalyptus, try putting them on your belly. And there's a ton of different oils out there that you can put on your stomach when you have cramps. And I'm telling you, the bloat goes away, my cramps go away, I feel just generally better, and it's so crazy, but it works. Okay guys, that's it for today. I talked a lot, so I'm sorry about that, but I hope it helped. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you'd like to see more health related minimalism, saving money things that my channel is about. Okay guys, bye. I'll see you next week.